Hey guys, welcome to Production Music Live. My name is Francois. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the style of Purple Line by Ben Böhmer. Super nice, more deep house kind of track. And we have a remade edit here with slightly different harmonies and melodies. And it's all done with Ableton stock effects and instruments plus Serum, for example, on these keys here. And other than that, we are not using any third-party plugins. We also have a version, or I've also made a version with the original melodies and chords. So let's quickly take a look at the original harmonies and the original track here as a reference track, soloing. Okay, and here's our remake version with the original harmonies. All right, and you might be wondering, like, why are we taking such an extended look at Ben Böhmer's sound? This is like one of our videos covering his sound. It's like video 4 or 5 already. In my opinion, this sound is one of the most interesting sound worlds right now to look at for producers, because it's sort of combining very organic elements with electronic elements and kind of building a bridge between. Years ago, we had progressive house and trance music and stuff like that. And traditional listeners to music would not really be into that music. But I think this type of music here is kind of closing the gap between those two worlds. And that's why it's sort of innovative and it's more humanized electronic music. And we are using less reverbs and we're trying to get more clean sound design, more rich sounds out of digital plugins as well. And that's why, in my opinion, this is super interesting to study and pick the best out of these sound worlds to make use in your own sounds of it as well and learn from for the most part. Okay, quickly going back. And now let's get a little overview of our version here. We have a roughly 8 minutes long track almost, and we have an intro section here, build-ups and intermediate sections here, and then something that kind of not uses many of our drums and percussion elements, and then we're building it up to this more main part here where it says rides, where lots of the elements are playing. Also our picked guitar, for example, is playing in the instruments group. And then we have a break part here where we are slightly changing our chord progression as well. And then we are coming back in this part. The original is playing vocals here. And then we have the drop around this area here, where we also have sort of the climax of the song after 6 minus 1.5, so like 4.5 minutes or something like that. Then we have some intermediate part here, another rebuilt part, and then we go into the outro. So if you're playing it in a DJ set, you can mix into it and mix out of the track. Okay, and so you see we have a lot of different instruments here, and this is also due to the nature that this is a remake. Because usually, for example, I would use on a like original track where you start really from scratch, where you're not trying to match another sound, I would probably use a couple of hi-hats less. But I do use all of these here to sort of get closer to the original sound. And sometimes that means layering certain drum elements and percussion elements in order to get it right. But we are going to take a look at this in a minute. We have our drums in this group, basically. If I solo the group, sounds like this. Then we have our bass sound here in between. And then our instruments group down here. And then we have our two kick sounds, layered kick sounds up here. This one from the sample pack coming with our Ben Böhmer pack. It's in the one-shots in the kicks. Which one? 16. So it's this one. And we have, in this Ben Böhmer pack, we have 5 different Ableton templates, just like this one here, for you to use, dissect, learn from, and you can pick out, for example, the main plugs and use them in your own track with a different chord progression, but you can use that sound, like have a great kickstart into your track right there. You can also use some of these drum elements. And other than that, we have MIDI files in here as well. And we have the sample pack containing one-shots and also loops like top loops, for example. Well, and so on. And now let's quickly take a look at like one of our busiest sections and go through it step by step. And then we can take a look at the whole arrangement afterwards. So I'm going through single elements one by one right now. And I'm doing this here in the beginning in this part, quickly deactivating our drums group and our instruments group. And we're only playing our kick and bass now. Let's take these basses off right now as well. And take a look at our kick sounds first. So we're playing this one and we're sort of taking off a little bit of the frequencies around 270 because I have this sample playing along. And it's from our D Premium Volume 2 sample pack, and it's named Organic because it's kind of sounding a bit more like an actual bass drum in a rehearsal room. And this is more focused on this area here. So we are blending them in. And you have this nice thump of that one and the more organic part of this one. That's really what I'm trying to achieve in this remake here. Make sure it doesn't sound super electronic. And thereby, in our drums group, I'm also using this ambience thing recorded from a library. Let's actually activate the group here. And there's no effects on this group, by the way. It's all done in the individual audio track. And then we have a shaker on the kick. This might sound a bit unusual. I also thought when remaking it, like something's up with the shakers here. But if you put them all together, one by one, it starts making sense. So we have this shaker element also from our sample pack D Premium Volume 2. Shaker 15, putting a link in the description to this and this sound pack as well. You can open the description and take a look at our website to pick up this whole Ben Böhmer sound pack or our drum sample pack D Premium, or also look into one of our online courses on making tracks from start to finish in Ableton. I have another group of eighths of hi-hats here. So you see low velocity on the first hit and the offbeat has high velocity. Same thing here. And then we have another one of these. So it's using a sample out of the Premium Volume 1. Playing the same pattern, and this one is more real or traditional instrument kind of close hi-hat sample. And this one is also being sent into send effect number A here, which is a reverb, 2 seconds of decay time. And let's take a look at this one here. So slightly different pattern, a bit longer in the notes, and this one here is missing. So this is what we're getting. And we have this thing below, which is like, right now we are only trying to get a more, traditionally or organic sounding groove going here. Make sure it's not sounding too electronic. Okay, and then we have this cluck thing. which is a super short part of one of our D Premium perk samples here. Just like set simpler to one-shot mode, put erosion and overdrive on top, a little bit of chorus, and then roll off most of the low end here, and like have this super short MIDI note. Well, the MIDI note is not that short, but like this one-shot mode thing here is like super short. And where are we playing it? In the 4th position of one hit of the bar. Don't worry about those deactivated notes here. That's always like happening when you're like quickly playing around, copying tracks down and deactivating old patterns and replacing them with new ones. You can always go quickly back and activate those old ones as well. Shaker on kick below that. That one is on every kick. And this down here is a layered group of shakers. That was like 4 or 5 shakers. So I really went through the original track and tried to listen like what types of shakers are there. Like sometimes that could even mean like Ben used a shaker loop and you're just then listening to it, trying to remake the whole thing, but using like 4 shakers to do so. This is one of those. Sounds really nice and natural. And this is the other one. And then we have this wood element here. Yeah, that's very typical. That always helps, like a wood in position 3 and 4 with, you know, different velocities. Yeah, that's a nice one. Let's put these elements together now, quickly. So sometimes you listen to these single elements, you're like, okay, how is this going to work in the full track in the mix later? But then you put it in the mix and it kind of starts making sense, all of this. We have another element here, perk, it's called. And this is a pattern that could also work for a techno track, but it's nice and marchy for this sound here, kind of helps getting the groove going. Always notice the difference in velocities here to really make sure that your that it sounds more human at the end of the day. Erosion on top of this one, chorus, and rolling off low frequencies. Not going to go through the processing here too much because the takeaway for you might be very little, because if you produce from scratch, as I mentioned before, you probably wouldn't do it. You just look for a sample that sounds more like what you want to do and then low cut and put some reverb on top of it or something like that. But if you're remaking a sound and you're listening back and forth between the original and your remake, that's how you work, because you go get a sample that sounds somewhat similar, then you start rolling off and then you start tweaking the sample with effects to get closer to the original sound. Okay. Then below we have this pre-kick zap thing. This one always helps me to make the kick sound a bit smoother by introducing some kind of artifact right in front of the kick. Let's quickly exaggerate it to listen more closely. Yeah, so that's super helpful. Then we have this perky tone. What is this one doing? Perk is from the melodic techno drums. Okay. some longer reverb on top. So this is send effect number 2, 5 seconds decay time. And clap head, pretty quiet this one. That's a nice ride or cymbal sound on top of the clap position, making it feel more natural. And then I have these layered claps here. These were like roughly 4 clap samples layered together to sort of match that original, more rich clap sound from the track. And that's what we have then. By the way, you can listen here at the end where the tail of the clap actually stops with the end of the sample. And here, if we're taking a closer look at the waveform, you can see it goes through into the next sort of beat. If you want to avoid that, you can simply process your sample in a way where it starts on the clap, where it goes until here, and then you render it out like that, and you always, like, you can still set it to loop mode, but you just make sure to start here and like have it loop like this, other than having it loop on the first hit of the bar. But I kind of forgot about this here, just saw it right now. That's what I usually do when this stuff happens. Then you still you remain with having that reverb tail. Okay, so shorter offbeat hat. Yeah, that one is super important. It's a sample with a bit of so-called skin. So that's what we call texture, a sample containing texture. And then we're throwing overdrive on top, some erosion, snorts effects. Remember, all of these processing instances down here are from native Ableton effects. So you find all these audio effects here in your browser. And it's always helpful. For example, if we take a look at this hi-hat processing chain here. So this is where we're coming from, or more or less. Take the reverb off as well. Okay. Overdrive gives it a bit more mid beef. And then we have this. This one is really like turning it into a different direction, adding this white noise on top. And then we even put a saturator on top, drive it to 74% to beef it up even more. Vocoder on top from the audio effects down here as well in the noise setting. Adds this type of white noise feeling to it if we totally exaggerate it. And then EQ some parts off the sound because we don't want to interfere with other elements here. We really need this off hi-hat more in this frequency range than anywhere near down here. Glue compressor, a little bit of compression, not really going into that right now. This one is emphasizing a bit on this frequency here. And what is this one doing? This one is taking down some resonant parts here. So that always like depends on the sample and on the mix later. It seems to bite a little in this area. So we made sure to take that off. And then some custom drum specific shorter decay time reverb on top of that sound. Okay, and this is a super important sound in the context of things here. Let's just play it with this group of shakers and our claps. Oh, I forgot to take the claps back down. They're super loud still. And I kind of forgot where they were. It's certainly not that loud. Okay, so that's actually a good point, because now while recording this tutorial, I can't go back in the timeline. You can do that on YouTube, but I can't. So let's actually take a benefit from having nicely organized Ableton templates. This is the template called Blue Circle. Now in Ableton, you can always go into the browser and pick out a template from your files. And then you see, if you go into the folder, it shows up the ALS file of that template. And then you can go down and it will show the different groups of instruments. And now we are in track 24 of our drums group. And let's open that up. And here's track 24 of our drums group. And I can just drag it in here and it will show up. And now, if I'm going to this part here, I can see, okay, 14.6. Well, we were just 1 decibel off. Okay. Let's set it to, let's actually enter it manually. Okay, so this is what we need here. Nice trick also for producing. When you're producing, and I make use of this a lot when I'm like, hey, I think I made this bass sound before. Let's just pick it from that other project. You go in there, pick it out, and you're super productive and faster in your production process. Okay, so ride shaker thing. Nice movement here with a little bit of swing applied, swing 60, 56. Let's take a look at our groove pool. Swing 56 right here. That's a great one. And then below that we have another hi-hat. That's one of those funny ones that if you look at the groove, which still has some swing applied, if I commit to it, by the way, you can see how these move back here and here. If I undo this by holding Command Z, this is where we end up. And this is what our groove is doing to this MIDI pattern here. Again, we have some, it's like, there's not a real like scientific background to that I did to these things here, just like messed around and tried and tested and trial and error what sounds nice or what sounds groovy. And you can also see the sample starts a bit late here. So I'm not really like taking this to the very beginning because I want to have it a little bit off. And you can also see sometimes if you're not sure about the timing of your drum elements, you can always move them around by activating the track delay function here and say, hey, actually, I want to play these guys like 19 milliseconds early compared to everything else. And then you can move them around. And for example, with snare sounds, this will sometimes really help make your drum groove overall more interesting. And now there's another cool thing. If you go to the controls, well, we actually didn't do it here. This one will show it in another sound in a minute, ran pan. But what we have here is the auto pan, moving that thing around your head all the time. This is pretty heavily applied here, by the way. Maybe if you optimize your track in a club mix for a club setting with a mono system, you would push that not anywhere near this hard. Some delay applied. Yeah, and then just emphasizing a bit on this higher frequency here. And now we have a super important thing here for this style of music, for this track. We have a couple of rides. And I kind of wanted these to sound pretty human. So it's a drum rack here where we placed 4 different ride samples from the Premium Volume 4 into, and we're switching around between them. And each of these if we go into the simpler, into the controls, you can see RAN pan at 48%, RAN pan at 53, and RAN pan at 50. So this thing, if we solo one of those, and you're on headphones now or on stereo speakers, you will clearly notice how it's moving around your head. And this is what RAN pan is doing. It's randomizing the panning position for this sample. And in this particular track here, this is really doing wonders to the groove. Okay, you might be wondering, hey, what is actually this drum kit in the background? That's actually a recorded thing from Contact 5 session drums here. I made that one for an old track of mine called Everything, and I just copied this one in here because it's a nice drum loop, sounding pretty human as well. I think I've already shown it in another YouTube video. I just bounced it out right here because, so in this case, everybody can make use of this sound file. And if you're interested, I'm also going to throw in the original MIDIs. Just leave a comment below if you're interested in knowing more about this one here. But it's basically Contact 5 session drums, and then you take like one of those standard kits and put in some of your MIDI information, and then it will sound more or less like this. Okay, quickly moving downwards here. We're more or less done with our drums group right now. Here are some cymbals and some reverse cymbals and some white noise. Recorded white noise piece in a simpler. And yeah, there we go with this part of the drums. Let's actually quickly close the drums group and play it all together. And yeah, as mentioned, if you build it from scratch, you probably use a couple of samples less. But nevertheless, I find it always interesting in those remakes because while remaking an existing track or elements of an existing track, you're stumbling over so many different things while tweaking samples to make them sound as another track. That's whenever I'm being asked, hey, what's the point of remaking an already existing track? Like why aren't you being creative or something like that? The answer, in my opinion, is always, well, in order to be really creative, you need to know lots of techniques. That's like why Picasso first, before starting his own style of art, learned all like historic styles of painting, of drawing, and all of that at different schools. And after he had acquired all these skills, then he could go out and truly be creative, because then he knew how to pretty much make everything, and then he knew what he needed for his next piece. And that's the cool thing about remaking stuff. You're stumbling over so many different sounds also by accident, that you're picking up a lot of knowledge on, you know, sampling, processing. And if we are going down to the instruments right now, we'll see also about synthesis and oscillators and wavetables and whatnot. Okay, so let's take a look at our bass sound here with wavetable in this case. Well, this chain looks scarier than it is. Actually a very simple sound. So So we are somewhere in the middle of a sine wave and a saw wave here, ending up with some kind of triangle wave. In wavetable, we have a filter with PRD 24 decibels per octave applied. And we're following this envelope for our amplitude here, 2 seconds of decay time, sustained down at -24. But if we take a look at the matrix, we can also see filter frequencies automated with envelope number 2. So we're following this pattern. It's like this is the slower attack on the sound and a very short decay time with, or quite short decay time with 845. And these erosions here are doing so little, I'm not even going to discuss them, but we have, because like amounts are down. And we have this auto filter here set into the OSR setting and adding a little bit of drive. It's like a sausage fattener in a way, but it's like saturating the sound inside of the filter. And here's a first EQ doing some surgical work there, and then a little bit of compression. Not sure if you noticed that, but if you're on a good sound system, you will notice that we're taking off a bit of resonance here. Some resonant peaks. Okay, then we have this glue compressor. But honestly, in a tutorial, it's probably going to be super hard to hear that anyways, and it's not going to make this big of a difference. So you would be completely fine by just ignoring these and focusing on like major elements shaping the sound. For example, like this auto filter here is rolling off most of the high frequencies. At least when the frequency cutoff is so low down. Okay, and then some sidechain, obviously, because we're playing right on top of the kicks a few times. So here, for example, this one is playing right into the kick and so on. But this sounds more like an unusual bass, but in the context of things, I think it sounds great. Okay, going right on, let's take a look at, like, I'm ignoring this bass pad for now because it's just a paddy sound filling up the frequencies, something for the mixing stage. Main progression, this one here, that's the moving plug. And we actually need to activate the group. And this one is not like the exact same pattern as in the original. It also took me a while to figure out something that sounds kind of nice and moving. This is the one I came up with. Works nicely. It has different velocities here for those different elements of sound. But obviously in the beginning of a next beat, we will always duck that thing with a sidechain anyways. And what's the sound? It's a Serum generated sound. It's a saw wave with a unison of 3 voices detuned to around 10:30 o'clock. And then this subby saw applied from the analog wave forms, and then a filter. 24 decibels per octave on top, and pluck on the cutoff with, 800 milliseconds of decay time and 1 second of decay time overall. Well, and these reverbs and delays are almost not activated. So the actual ones making differences here are this delay. With this EQ, we're taking off some resonant parts here. Delay 4-2. Why not a 3 or something like that? Kind of feels wrong, so it kind of falls into the groove. So let's not do that. Take a 2x4 and then sidechain to the kick as well. So this is our sound here, and progression wise we are in F minor. This is our root note, and this is just F minor here. If we look at this one, this is voiced down an octave, but we have it up here as well, the C, and we have this A flat here with minor third and major third. And oh yeah, so if we zoom out, we have the second chord here as well. And let's quickly take a look at that. What do we have? We have a root note, in this case is D flat. So what happens if we bring up G? So that's sort of D flat major, because this is a major third and this is a minor third. Let's undo this quickly. And then what's the next one? It's our first chord again. And then, so this one is same chord. And the last one is, let's bring A up, or B flat. So we have E flat, G, and B flat. And that's a major chord. One more time, it's just inverted. And we are playing the 6th C on top of it. Okay. And it's one of those stable chord progressions here. You can see F is almost playing all the way through and C is actually playing all the way through. Super stable. And we are leaving room for melody elements on top. We are not playing melody elements with this chord progression. Melody elements like this one here, for example. And then super nice, just very jammy. It's not really like what kind of pattern and are we even seeing here? So that's just jammed right on top. And it's using Serum here as well to generate the sound with a simple saw wave. And again, envelope 2 controlling the filter cutoff here. Nothing crazy going on. And these effects are almost not applied. But what about this compressor? Yeah, that was doing a little bit of work. And then we have this utility here, automated over time, gain, because sometimes we want that thing a bit quieter, sometimes a bit louder. And low cut here, delay. This filter comes in at times when needed in the arrangement setting. And then this is our reverb on top. We have 2.6 seconds of reverb. And then just another element of this caliber here, where we have this little detail. And then So this is what makes your track interesting. You have these tiny bits and you just distribute them carefully over your arrangement, and this will make maybe, you know, mediocre sounding chord or, you know, track in general with a nice chord progression, obviously. But like, if you want to like keep it interesting to the listener, like add a little bit of ear candy to the sound, that's the way to do it. And you always make sure you're staying in key. This is nothing crazy here. We have that's octaves of C. And again, so this is not some rocket science. We can just like put that in any time of the day and track sounds more interesting. Let's take a look at this Pluck Sound here. So we're playing F, A flat here, and E flat, parts of our progression. More in the middle of our frequency range, and we're using wavetable to do so. It's a saw wave from wavetable combined with a wavetable. It's a bit more stretched into a square one. And again, a plucky sound, just like we did with Serum here. Envelope number 2 controls the filter shape, following this envelope. And then, yeah, I mean, it's like, you probably noticed already that we're kind of almost always doing the same thing. What we're trying to do is get something that sounds pretty analog and organic out of these electronic devices here. And thereby we use the source sound usually, then we try to put an auto filter on top, beefing that up with some, you know, internal drive setting here in one of those not clean but other filter settings. Kind of adding more belly to the sound. And then we are always trying to get it sound a bit more, you know, nicely distributed over the frequency spectrum. That's why we use reverb and delay, so to keep it moving in the panorama. And sometimes we'll use a chorus effect to widen the sound. Okay, so here we have another arpeggio. It's pretty much the same sound like this pluck. It's just opened up a little more in the filter cutoff here at the end of the day in this auto filter. This one is a bit more open than the other one. And other than that, it's the same sound, different pluck pattern though. Let's play it together with the kick. Yeah, this is our nice wavetable pad sound here. Super nice sound. It sounds directly like Deadmau5 or Justice or something like that. And we rolled off some of the high frequencies here. We're using a sine wave and obviously a saw wave, and filter applied, and not much more going on here. Keeping this one in the background for the most part, because we don't want to interfere too much with the groove of things. That's, by the way, also the reason why I took this one out and kept it out. And so a bunch of swells here. They make a lot of sense together with this chord progression. You can see how I'm placing them right in those, like at the end of those pause parts here, or sometimes even in the middle of them. and that needs like also a saw wave, but with many voices detuned into unison. Then you get this wah sound. And typical for Ben is this guy here. At least that's what it feels like. He's sort of, I feel like he's putting it into his tracks a lot, but maybe it's just a feeling. Okay, and hard pick guitar. Playing root note, third and fifth, down an octave, and hard pick guitar from the Ableton Suite library here. Oh, it sounds pretty nice, by the way. And a little bit of reverb on top of the thing, and a little bit of 2 to 4 delay on top as well. And now this is also very typical here for the sound of Ben, like filtering up soft pad sounds to kind of keep it interesting as well. So okay, and then down here we have a little bit of white noise. This one sounds nice as well. It's using the AutoPan trick. You can use AutoPan as an LFO if you don't want to use the Max for Live thing here. Pick it up from here and then set it to phase 0, shape 0, set it to hertz, and set this one up here, set this one up here to sine wave, amount fully applied, and then mess around with the rate. Can be used on any sound, could be super useful to make your tracks more interesting. And yeah, it's just using a white noise from Serum here. Okay, so other than that, we have this pad sample. It's actually a drum percussive sample that was re-recorded, putting a lot of reverb on top of it and freezing it, and then resampling it in sampler. And how do you get this glassy vibe into it? You can use Corpus. Also from the audio effects here, this guy. I mean, ambient track right there. And then you feed that into a reverb and you're good to go. Wall off some unneeded frequencies. Okay, now let's zoom out of that thing here. Close the group. Look at the arrangement quickly, and we can see this was the busy part we just went through here. And let's actually quickly select all of them so we get a better overview of what we're doing here. Yeah, we are messing around with those. We're building all these elements up over time. So this pitchy lead is super typical for Ben's sound as well. I think it's kind of used a lot by him because I think he used to play some brass instrument as a kid, and that's where this inspiration could come from. And you have, in this case, Serum, saw wave, 3 voices, set it to mono, portamento up, set it to always, and then it will create some nice portamento between like less portamento here when notes are closer and more when the jumps are bigger. Yeah, delay auto pan to keep it moving around your head a little more, and some longer reverb applied on it, 5 seconds here. I basically copied the arrangement of the original track, so this one will always bring those parts where you leave out the drums. Then bring some of them back. Then introduce more melodic elements here and bring some more drums. And then in order to prepare your drop, you need to take out some elements again, just by like keeping it interesting by these little pieces here, 1 bar or 2 bars where you're only playing a few elements left. And you can also see whenever something changes, we also try to make slight changes to our chord progression here as well. We're adding this note on top. Which one is it? It's C in this case. And we didn't play it before, so we are kind of making clear to the listener now something's changing. And now what happened here, we looked at the chords before and we were like, okay, this is a minor chord, this is a major chord, and so on. Nothing crazy going on. But now pretty much all of these chords have changed into 7th chords. If I'm taking F up, C up here, you can see that's an F minor 7th chord. And the same thing happens with all the other chords. Super nice trick to introduce something that feels super different in your break. And Ben is pretty much a master at that. And here I messed around with some didgeridoo sounds to keep, like, get this dark pad thing for the break part. And there's a couple of swells. Yeah, and never forget about these tiny elements here. It's nothing crazy again. You're just playing the root, the third, the fifth, and nothing can really go wrong here. Okay, I just realized I'm almost recording since an hour, and we are going to stop this video here, this walkthrough through this track. It's a super complex track in a remake. It contains a lot of interesting things where you can learn a lot from. But let's keep this around an hour, and I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough session. Feel free to comment below if there's something that would be interesting to cover, which I forgot here or I forgot to mention or something like that. Leave a like, subscribe to our channel. Also, feel free to visit the description of this video for, you know, the Ben Böhmer sound pack we made together, and you have some great value in there, in my opinion. Like, these are fully arranged tracks, fully editable for you. It's like a mini album, completely editable. If you get the upgrade of the thing with the Sun Vibes pack on top, there's even a start to finish course inside of that, teaching you how to make a bend style track completely from start to finish, alongside 4 additional templates. So that's a great pack as well. Also, feel free to check the link in the description for our harmony courses and start to finish courses and Ableton beginners courses. And now we are going to play back the full track, and I hope to see you next time.